Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Phantom Perspectives. I'm doing this in the morning, so I'm currently in my pajamas right now, so... Uh, and it's also very cloudy out, so there's not much lighting, so I apologize in advance for that. But today we're going to be discussing episode 31 of Danny Phantom, Flirting with Disaster, and this one's a Valerie slash Technus episode. We once again focus on Valerie as a we once again have Valerie as one of the main characters, as this is an episode that furthers her and Danny's will continue growing relationship. Only in this case, it's also co-opted by Technus, as the beginning of the episode has Danny and Technus fight, and in the middle of the fight, Technus manages to escape by going into Valerie's phone. During the time, because they were fighting in the mall, and Valerie, Sam Tucker, and Valerie's friend Star, I forgot her name. I think it's Star. I don't know. Were at the mall at the same time too. While Danny and Technus were fighting, Valerie did want to take part in the fight, but it turns out that after her dad learned about her ghost hunting, he took her suit. As such, she's kind of out of it for now. However, it doesn't last. However, like I said, Technus makes a getaway in her phone, so things kind of seem okay. And after Danny gets knocked aside, he turns back into his human form in a place that no one sees him. But later on, Danny, Sam, Tucker, Valerie, and their class go to Axion, getting a personal tour from Valerie's dad. It turns out that in Axion they have essentially they're essentially a big supercomputer. The base of it is can be controlled on Earth via Axion, but it also can teleport, but it can also send a transmission up to a satellite, which can give whoever has access to it access to all the technology and computerized. Can give whoever has access to it access to all the technology around the world, computers, just pretty much anything that runs on a computer system. As such, once Technus sees that, he sees an opportunity, but at the same time he knows that if he starts doing this, Danny might get in his way. As such, he earlier saw that Danny and Valerie kind of had a thing for each other. As such, to try and keep her distracted, he tries to get him and Valerie occupied. Though as an extra precaution, Technus manages to find Valerie's suit and, well, takes over it. It's kind of like that episode of Batman Beyond where that guy from modern day Gotham had his brain turned into a computer, and then when he awoke in Neo Gotham, he managed to transmit his consciousness into the suit, allowing him to pretty much control it without anybody inside. It's like that. He's pretty much controlling Valerie's suit. And he does actually fight Danny, but manages to escape, and as he gets away and Danny and Valerie start getting to know each other, Technus kind of starts rigging everything so that it's more romantic and that they'll want to spend more time with each other. As Danny and Valerie are going to a restaurant this time, he causes the lights to go out, which in turn has them have a candlelit dinner. When they go to a ball game, he rigs it so that they win a contest, so that they win free tickets to a carnival. And then when they're at the carnival and they're on the Ferris wheel, the Ferris wheel stops. He stops the Ferris wheel and rigs a bunch of lights that are in their view to say DF and VG surrounded by a heart. It's a middle, and yeah, I actually kind of admit that those scenes are kind of adorable, seeing them together and actually kind of growing closer. It's kind of nice, but of course Sam, being Sam, is jealous of Valerie and doesn't think this is a good idea, especially since Valerie still hates Danny Phantom. As such, they were spying on them, but however, the whole time that Technus has been doing stuff, Tucker's PDA has been going haywire, picking up Technus' signal. As such, they're able to piece together that Technus is rigging everything to try and get Danny and Valerie together. But of course, once they tell Danny about this, he thinks that that's just a blow of hooey, thinking that they're just jealous. As such, Danny just kind of walks away and thinks it's nothing. But at the same time, as Sam and Tucker were confronting Danny, Valerie overheard them, and in the conversation they say, "You don't really like Valerie, do you?" And Danny says, "Well, maybe, kind of." And yeah, there actually are budding feelings there, and it's actually kind of nice. And Valerie overhears that, and she actually kind of starts sharing those feelings as well. But it doesn't. However, even to the point, And as such, when she overheard the conversation and then made herself known after Danny left, Sam, to try and keep their cover, says that, okay, you know what, we're just happy that Danny's happy. So if you two want to be together and be an item, it's fine by me, which actually results in a funny scene where Valerie starts hugging her and Sam is just visibly restraining herself from going nuts about this. But as this is going on, Danny just thinks it's all a joke. It turns their suspicions are confirmed when Tetanus once again attacks Danny with Valerie's suit. However, Danny can't go ghost because, for one thing, there are witnesses. They're in public. There are cameras around. Valerie is nearby. Ergo, if Danny goes ghost now, he'll blow his cover. As such, the only thing he can do right now is run while Tetanus keeps trying to blast him. But as they're blasting but during the fight, Valerie manages to come in and starts fending off Tetanus. Because earlier, during an online flirting session between Danny and Valerie, they have revealed personal stuff about themselves to each other, and one of the things she revealed was that she was a black belt. And so, anyway, she manages to fend off Tetanus enough for Danny to escape, and so Danny manages to jump into a dumpster and transforms into Danny Phantom to fight Tetanus. And, of course, as such, when he arrives, Valerie hides, and Danny, knowing that Valerie's not in there, knows that he doesn't have to hold back right now. But unfortunately, so he just starts blasting apart her suit just bit by bit. But Valerie didn't hear the part about how he knows no one's in there, and so after he destroys the suit and goes away, Valerie thinks that Danny was actually trying to kill her. Even though he knew that no one was in there. And Danny actually did see her come out after he destroyed the suit. He saw that look on her face, and he realizes that that's exactly what she was thinking. As such, Danny kind of starts to think that maybe this is something that this is getting kind of, and so Danny does feel hurt about this, but he knows that at the same time, Tetanus is the major threat. They still have to take care of him. But in the meantime, Valerie also takes this opportunity to convince her dad because earlier on when Tetanus used her suit to destroy everything, Valerie's dad thought that Valerie just took the suit back and blew things up. But thanks to the security camera, she's able to prove to her dad that someone just stole her suit. And as such, he does believe her when he sees the footage, but at the same time, the footage also showed her defending Danny. But however, at that same time, Danny has to sneak back into Axion with a headset to try and find Tetanus. And as he's going in, he overhears Valerie and her dad having a conversation about her saving Danny, and it turns out that it confirms to him that she has feelings about him too, and those feelings are so strong she actually is considering giving up ghost hunting for him, which Danny kind of thinks is kind of nice. One, it just kind of shows how much she wants to be a part of the relationship, and two, it'd be very beneficial for Danny because it means she's no longer hunting him anymore. On top of that, I should also probably mention this too. Before Danny came here, Jack actually headed him off and wanted to talk to him about getting a girlfriend, because there are rumors spreading that Danny and Valerie are an item. So Jack pulled Danny aside to have an awkward father-son talk, as he put it. But he does give some nice advice that if this is someone you want to spend time with, then maybe you should make it official. And he gave Danny a class ring. However, Jack thought that Danny actually had a thing for Sam and not Valerie, so he engraved it to Sam. But of course, Danny still takes the ring anyway. As such, Danny tries to go. Anyway, back to Axion. So, before Danny infiltrated Axion, he gave the class ring to Sam to hold on to. But in the meantime, as he goes in, hold on a second. Sorry about that. My dog came in and I wanted to close the door. Anyway, so Danny does get into Axion and realizes that what Tetanus is trying to do. So he grabs a jetpack that Axion had because he plans to go out into space and take care of Tetanus when he beams up to the satellite. But unfortunately, Valerie and her dad overheard Danny. Hold on a sec. He wants attention, so he's going to get attention. Anyway, so Valerie and her dad overheard Danny. get used to it, Xander. You're the one that begged me to pet you. Anyway, so Valerie and her dad actually overheard Danny while he was sneaking in while he was talking to Sam, so they go and investigate, and they see Danny there by the computer, and their immediate response is that he's trying to hack it himself, which Danny tries to deny, but they think it's a load of crock, and Valerie then says, see, Dad, this is exactly why I need to hunt ghosts, to stop them from doing whatever they want. And Technus overhears that, and because he's just so close, he decides that he might as well give her a hand. Which I've also noticed that apparently... Also, do you notice that apparently Valerie's gear... Now, when it comes to Valerie and her gear, all of her stuff seems to come from Danny's enemies. Because what happens next is that Technus actually shoots a beam to her, and she was holding what was left of her suit, and when she was making this example, and the beam ends up upgrading the suit into honestly a really kick-ass design. It's black and red. It's got sleeker thing. Has a faceplate so you can see her face. It has a new improved hoverboard that comes right out of her legs. She's got these hovering cubes like that's kind of like Mr. Terrific that shoot blast. It's actually a really kick-ass design, and it really looks threatening. But unfortunately, at that point, it's too late. Tennis managed to break through the firewall that they had on the computer, and managed to beam up to the Axion satellite. And he starts messing with technology around the world. He starts messing with traffic lights in Britain. He infiltrates a. Hold on, I think he wants to get down. He attacks a computer station. He attacks a store in Japan. Just pretty much, he's just causing worldwide mayhem via the satellite. And so Danny realizes he has to get up there right now. So he grabs a helmet off a nearby spacesuit and blasts himself off into space, with Valerie chasing after him. Which I think at this point she should also be going for Technus because Technus, being Technus, decided to gloat after he won and sent a transmission down to Axion to tell Danny that he'd already succeeded. And it was on a giant computer, so you can't make the argument that Valerie and her dad didn't see that. So she should at least know that Technus was also trying to rig the satellite. But as such, however, I guess she didn't see it, or she just ignored it. Either way, she's still hunting Danny, as when he goes into space, she's specifically going after him. And so she keeps trying to blast him, she's trying to knock him down, but Danny keeps trying to avoid her, and he manages to knock her unconscious at a couple points to try and keep her distracted, or at least Technus does. Bottom line, he needs to get her. Bottom line, while she's briefly out of commission, Danny manages to destroy the satellite with Technus in it by launching the jetpack he's wearing right into Technus and pretty much destroying it, and thus ending everything that Technus is doing on Earth. However, by that time, Valerie wakes up, and Danny managed to turn invisible and latch onto her hoverboard, and unfortunately, after she can't find him, she goes back to Earth, just even more pissed off. In the meantime, back on Earth, Danny does say that he still wants to make it official with Valerie and still make her his girlfriend, but Valerie comes up to him and tells him that while she did want to be in a relationship with him, she doesn't think it's possible right now, or at all. She doesn't think it's possible now, as she feels like what she's doing is dangerous. She doesn't want him to get hurt, and as such, she just thinks it's better off if they stay friends, which actually does hit a low blow to Danny as he gets down, and unfortunately as such, Valerie goes away to continue her ghost hunting, now even more determined than ever to go after Danny Phantom, while Danny just kind of sulks while Sam goes to give him some comfort. Danny even giving her the ring, and actually, like, a nice little funny joke is that when she had the ring, she looked inside to see the engraving, but unfortunately she saw it upside down, so to her it said Wes. It was actually kind of funny. But yeah, as such, Valerie. So yeah, the episode ends with Valerie going off to continue her ghost hunting, Danny kind of sulking with Sam to comfort him, and Tucker is still hopeless. So, on the whole, what did I think of the episode? Honestly, it was actually a pretty nice episode. It was actually a really nice episode. Like, kind of rewatching the show, Valerie has kind of grown on me as a character. When I first watched the show, I honestly wasn't that big a fan. I honestly was just kind of to her, and like I didn't hate her, but I was kind of indifferent to her presence. But in the show, I kind of like seeing her kind of grow as a character when grow as a character. Like first she was one of those shallow background characters that just kind of looked down on Danny and co. But then to see her start going through development as she lost everything she had thanks inadvertently to Danny, to her kind of becoming one of those losers, to her kind of getting to know them, getting to know Danny, and just kind of becoming what she is right now. And on top of that, I kind of like the Batman Catwoman dynamic between her and Danny. Well, it's kind of like that in the case of their secret identities. Like in their superhero like in their other identities, they're complete enemies. But to see them kind of grow closer and in their human identities, and it's actually really nice, and I like seeing that. It's just cute. It's just really nice seeing that. And this episode is kind of the pinnacle of that. Kind of seeing that all come together, and you see that Technus takes advantage of that, but it is admittedly adorable seeing them in these situations, them obviously feeling something for each other and actually both considering maybe we could make it official. It's actually kind of nice and kind of makes the ending a little sad too, because they do stop because Danny does manage to stop Technus, but unfortunately, whatever feelings that he and Valerie were building for each other are kind of now blown out of the water because Valerie thinks that her ghost hunting needs to take priority over her relationship status, which actually kind of feels sad, which I think kind of is a little sad too, because Danny actually did seem to be willing to go through with it. It's even though she hates his other identity. As such, it's kind of a bittersweet. It's actually kind of bittersweet in that regard. And on top of that, I kind of like seeing the personal melodrama mixed with the supervillain antics. Like Tennis's ultimate goal is just to keep Danny distracted long enough until he could figure out what was going on, until he could ultimately hack the computer in Axion, because it had like a 10,000 or 10 million digit firewall code. And so, of course, having Technus try and keep Danny as distracted as he could by by playing matchmaker with him and Valerie, actually kind of made sense. But it also kind of made the ultimate fit. But it kind of made the ultimate payoff for the episode a little bit sadder too. Because while it was a ruse by the villain, the feelings were real between Danny and Valerie. And so, just to kind of see that all come crashing down because of Valerie's own own hatred for Danny, it's actually a little sad in that regard. On top of that, though, I think another example is that Technus is actually kind of in a little bit of peak form in this episode as a villain. Like I've always liked Technus. He's kind of like the same hamminess that Dr. Anima was in Ben 10, but in this case, he actually is thinking strategically, and he kind of does get what he wanted in this episode. He accesses the World Wide Web, and he starts haunting all across the world. But I kind of like how he uses Danny's emotions against him to keep him distracted, and the only time he ever attacks him is when possibly that angle doesn't work anymore. Like when Danny is told by Sam and Tucker that Tennis is playing him and Valerie. Though considering that Danny didn't actually believe them and thought it was all just a little crock, he probably could have continued playing the romance card. But I don't know. Maybe he just wanted to cover all his bases, you know. But as such, I think the strength of this episode is just kind of in the interpersonal relationship, in the interpersonal stuff with Danny and Valerie. I do like seeing the superhero action. I do, and I actually like that. And that's ultimately kind of what I like. I like the talks. And if you ask me, and I know, yeah, Danny may have been the source of the anger for Valerie, and I can understand why she's angry, but it's ultimately Valerie's own anger and hatred for Danny that kind of ends their relationship, as without context, she sees Danny destroying her suit, and she thinks that he was trying to destroy her, and then Technus takes advantage of that by giving her an even more upgraded suit. And even with proof that Technus is a major threat, she still goes after Danny. And ultimately, it's that resentment and anger that leads to her kind of becoming that ultimately leads to her becoming even more distant. In any case, it's like that she's kind of in her own self seclusion from having it's kind of like her loneliness is kind of her own fault in that regard. and it kind of makes it even more tragic. As such, again, I think the emotional center, I think the center of the episode, and I think the strongest part is just the stuff between Danny and Valerie, seeing them grow closer, and ultimately and want to become an item, but ultimately their double lives kind of get in the way of that, and ultimately one of them ends it because they think that this can never work with that, in conjunction with that. As such, on the whole, I think Flirting with Disaster is actually a really good episode for what it is. It's got a strong emotional center. Tennis is still a lot of fun. It's nice seeing Danny and Valerie growing closer, and the ultimate tragedy at the end kind of makes it feel a little bit more sad, and ultimately makes the episode stronger. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson. I'll see you next week. Take care.